Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is a returning guest. He's been on the radio with me. He's been on TV with me. East Lyme First Selectman Paul Formica is back at this table. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir. Good to be back.
You know, the fact that I say that you've been on my radio show, in my building, on TV, you are what they consider, you know, as a politician, you're kind of a media hound right now. But that's a good thing for a politician, right?
I just do what you ask me to do. That's all, Sean.
We ask you to come on, and you come on, right?
Nothing else gets me out of work for the afternoon.
There you go. And you're very good at it, too.
Oh, thank you, sir.
I want to start with your town, East Lyme. I want to start with maybe just kind of allowing you to pat yourself and your town on the back, because you won a sort of a tourist award recently. It was a Facebook thing, and you beat out pretty much every other community in Connecticut. So talk about that a little bit.
Number one, fan favorite town. And interestingly enough, it was not East Lyme. East Lyme itself came in 29th or 30th. But Niantic came in number one, Niantic being a village of the town of East Lyme. And so we won number one fan favorite town. Department of Economic and Community Development from the state of Connecticut is using this to promote its tourism for the state of Connecticut to all of the surrounding states that we have. And you know, the fan favorite town gets highlighted. We have a 4-minute video that the state is producing for us. They're in the middle of filming that now, and we'll all have copies of that to be able to link to and get that out for our businesses. That will go on and be showcased on the website for the state of Connecticut.
For those watching from other parts of the state, sort of a synopsis, if you will, of East Lyme and the village of Niantic. Just describe it, paint a picture.
Well, you know, East Lyme is a 36 square mile community on Long Island Sound. It's bifurcated by I-95, and everything south of 95 is the village of Niantic. North is the village of Flanders. And along our main street, which runs parallel to Long Island Sound and the railroad tracks, we built a wonderful boardwalk that got ruined in the storm, but we're coming back with that. And we've been able, through the state of Connecticut STEEP grants, which are small town economic assistance program grants, is to rebuild our town, downtown. New granite curbs, brick sidewalks, LED, old-fashioned looking streetlights, and it's really done a lot to pep up our community. We have no vacancies. It's a vibrant downtown. We have good restaurants, and we have great community spirit. And that's what turned out in this Facebook contest. And
is that how you won it? From just as many people as possible getting on and
voting? You vote every day,
yep.
And you vote for your fan favorite town. You vote for your fan favorite place. And we won't mention the other town, you know, with the M word there, but.
And how does that? I mean, tourist central in the summertime.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you know, Niantic East Lyme is at the gateway of Mystic Coast and Country.
Right.
You have to, that intersection of the conversions of I-95 and 395 as you move out into the rest of the best part of the state. Here we sit, and so we're a good opportunity for people to come down, enjoy our shops, enjoy our restaurants, enjoy what the beach has to offer. The new railroad bridge down there along Niantic just completed. That was an economic stimulus program, and they had to replace half of our boardwalk, and we ended up with a beach that was there doubling in size, a groin that you can fish on. So it's a great, 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 great town to come and visit and have a good time and walk the street.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you should mention some of the rebuilding that had to happen after Sandy. It's amazing how many shows I've had here with you know, town councilman or first selectman coming. I don't know if you know Caswell Cook from Westerly. He is a town councilman and has a business down in Musquamaca Beach and is kind of the sort of the director, president of the Musquamaca Beach area. He came on, talked about the rebuilding process because those folks got hit really bad. But East Lyme and being on the Niantic being on the shoreline too, you sustained damage and you had to rebuild too, just like a lot of the coastal towns in Connecticut.
Lots and lots of damage. We have some neighborhood communities along the water there that are still coming through it. And Crescent Beach, we just finished replacing the sidewalk. and they have a big bluff area that needs to be done. So all of that is coming back. But, you know, I thought for the most part the FEMA folks did a great job. They were responsive coming down. And
you did too, by the way, as far as coming on the radio with me and just getting on the airwaves and alleviating people's concerns and fears and kind of letting them know, you know, just things that they need to know during times of power outage and strife and everything.
During the storm.
Yeah.
You know, one of the big challenges you have is communication, as we're so dependent on electricity for our communication. So, you know, Facebook, which we won the fan favorite town, was a Facebook contest. But Facebook's turned out very big for us. And so I did these updates, these 2, 3 minute, 4-minute video updates as to what we were doing, how the town was progressing in terms of where the power outages were, what roads were open, and whatever we needed to provide to the community. And I felt like, you know, I probably was talking to a lot of folks on their iPhone, sitting in their car, charging it in the cigarette lighter there, you know.
With their app.
Yeah.
Isn't social media, I mean, isn't it, I mean, it's just a fantastic tool to be used for purposes like this.
It's unbelievable. Yep. It's so, it reaches so many people so quickly. And now we do, for example, we have, you know, have a problem at the prison. There used to be, the old days, you rang a siren. And so who hears that? The folks within the proximity of the prison. But now with Facebook, you get everybody on board and you notify not only our town, but neighboring towns as well, all in the same time. So the communication has really stepped up, and our guys do a great job. Our public safety Facebook page, Park and Rec Facebook page. And
do you find that someone like you and your job, I mean, you live for that, but it's when a person really shines during those, you know, emergency situations where your voice, like with me on the radio and on TV, you know, when you know, disaster happens, they turn to you and they need information, and you're almost like a calming influence to them, right?
Well, and you tell them what they don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's it's the uncertainty, I think, that people are afraid of. They don't know when the power's gone. And a lot in our town, power has to do with water, because there's a lot of wells. So if you don't have power and you don't have water, it makes for a long day. And especially when we got into that snowstorm, and a lot of people didn't have heat. So, but we have a great staff at the town of East Lyme that really step up, our emergency management director. And, you know, so all I do is get out of the way sometimes and allow those professionals to do what they do, and then just provide information and keep everything moving in the same direction.
As far as, well, Sandy was probably the most recent big, you know, event that occurred. How do you think like CLMP and those folks handled it compared to the last times where there was really a lot of scrutiny placed on them and the other public utilities around the state because people, you know, were just getting so frustrated going so long without power?
Well, you know, Irene, they were not prepared.
Yeah.
Nobody was ready. And it set up a big red flag after it was over. What do we need to do? The tree situation is much different than it was in storms of past in the 20 years. Trees are taller, higher. Nobody wants to cut them down anymore. So Irene really focused the need on how to move forward. And I thought CLMP really stepped up in terms of Sandy. They did a lot better job.
They learned a lot of lessons.
They learned a lot. The town learned a lot. But there were still some things that needed to be done. And then you have the big snowstorm that happened that shut down power, and you know, I don't remember. Your driveway, you remember? You remember as a kid power going out like this?
Not really.
I don't think it ever. Unless I don't remember, I don't think it ever did.
We're getting a little older.
that snowstorm, you have 2 feet, 3 feet of snow in some areas, and they had we had 80% out of power in East Lyme, and they had us back on at 36 hours. Now, we had good equipment, and we were able to accompany those guys with when they needed it with snow plows to open some spots for them. But I thought they really learned their lesson as a result of that.
And a key to success in that area is the cooperation. A lot of people don't realize that they have to work with municipalities, you know, as far as, you know, roads and trees overhanging and cutting down branches and everything. And it's a coordinated effort, isn't it?
Well, and that's what I told CLMP right from the very beginning with Irene. Make municipalities partners in the process. You know, all we need you to do is to make sure that the wires in those trees that are on that road are dead. We can, towns like East Lyme with the equipment we have, we can take care of the rest. Maybe the smaller towns like, you know, Putnam and Sprague and some of those other may not have those resources right away, but we do. So we can provide you with the roads that are closed. We can provide you with the problems on those roads. CLMP come down, deaden those wires, make it safe, and then our guys will take over. And once they started to understand that after the third storm, and we started to be able to participate more, then things worked out better for both of us.
Do you think towns like Norwich and Groton that have their own public utilities, is it an advantage or a disadvantage during these times of strife for them to have their own versus like your town?
I think some of each, but
Yeah.
in terms of recovery and restoration, having your own, you're calling your own shots. So I think Groton was on board, and
Yeah.
Norwich was on board a lot earlier than a lot of other communities because they could make those
That's right.
decisions. And I sit here and say what I think they should do, not having the knowledge of knowing this whole swath of devastation throughout the state. But the other side of it is if you go to a foreign country and you say, we had $7 billion worth of damage. There were, 1,000 poles down and power was out, but we were back on in a week.
They think it would be the most amazing thing.
Yeah. And here we are, we're a little impatient.
Yeah.
But I thought all in all, everything is moving forward, and the communication is the key. The CLMP has added some regional liaisons that work in conjunction with the liaison that we have from CLMP that sat right in our Emergency Operations Center. And so that information, once that gets shared, then everybody can act and react.
As we taped this, it wasn't that long ago that there was it Nyannick Day or East Lyme Day?
Celebrate East Lyme.
Celebrate East Lyme. How did it go, and what was the event all about?
Well, it went great. We had about 30,000 people on the street. We closed Nyannick Main Street, and it started 13 years ago when the tall ships came. And you may remember the first time they came, they were going to do the Parade of Sail in New London, and as they were beginning to assemble, they needed a place to kind of be and organize, and it was Nyannick Bay. And so the first selectman at the time decided, hey, we ought to close the road and have a little party and go out and watch the ships. And that's how it started. And then every year after that, it's been an opportunity to have a party. But we had 200 street vendors. We had fireworks provided by Dominion. I was in a dunk tank to benefit the Heart Association, as I've done every year.
Boy, how many people were lined up for that?
Yeah, the people, they didn't even throw the ball after
just
a while.
pushed it?
They just went and pushed it.
I'll give you doubled if I could just go and push
They didn't even give them. They just went. Some guys are walking by pushing it. They didn't even pay.
But it was a great time, fireworks and all, right?
It was great. The streets were full. We had music, and we had a sandcastle competition, a raft race. You had to make your own raft and go. So there's a lot of good old-fashioned community fun, and it brought a lot of people to see what our town's about.
Do you ever try to coordinate with like a really big event that's going on in the region, like for example Sail Fest and the fireworks that happen with New London and Groton? Do you kind of tailor some of your events around that so maybe you can take advantage of it a little bit timing-wise?
Well, we try to keep away from having them the same time.
To compete with them, yeah.
I remember OpSail last year was right at Sail Fest,
yeah.
and so they had to do some maneuvering around that. But I think there's enough that people want things to do, and they want to get down on Main Street, whether it's Main Street in London, which is seeing a resurgence, or Main Street in Nyannick, and make sure it's a family event. And I think that's what's important. We had teen areas there, we had music for kids, we had all kinds of things for kids to do, a little train that they could drive around on. So it's important just to provide good old-fashioned community family fun, and that's what we try to do here.
Let's talk about some development in East Lyme, because with things getting better, I understand new development. There was like it was sort of a big mixed commercial residential thing that was sort of like postponed for about 5 years or so, and now that's back on track.
Well, it's called the Gateway.
Okay.
And the Gateway was identified as that area where the old Shack restaurant was, right off exit 74. The building still is there, and they moved down the street. But that was passed in, I believe, 2008 or 2009 by the Zoning Commission after a number of public hearings, a number of site plan presentations, and it would have 425,000 square feet of retail fronting on Route 161, which is right about where the exit 74 southbound comes out, right? There's an electronic grid station there, and then that big area. There's a couple hundred acres. And then on the, on the other side, entering from exit 73 is the opportunity. They were going to put residential units there to kind of support. And then the economy tanked. Yeah. And so nobody was expanding retail and nobody was building buildings. And so it got all its approvals and then sat dormant and vacant until a few weeks ago or a few months ago. And they decided, you know what, the retail environment is still not the greatest, but there's a lot of market and call for rental residential units. So we want to build that first and then come back and build the front part with the commercial. So they got all the permits, and they went through, got the inland wetlands permit and all the site plan requirements that they needed to do, and began the process of doing that. I think groundbreaking is very shortly for that. And then a large big box came and showed some interest in the front part. So unbeknownst to them, they found themselves in negotiations about trying to resurrect that part of it. And I understand they're pretty close to getting a big box signing on. And
you don't want to say the name of the place? Or?
I don't know that they've signed on. It's been rumored to be a large wholesaler, Costco-like type place. But I don't know what's going on. I don't have any insight.
But just the fact that someone like that is interested in it in the first place is a good sign.
Oh, it's huge. It's a regional draw.
Right.
And so let's say 425,000 square feet of retail, and whoever this big box is gets 150,000 of it. That leaves 275,000 of little spaces, and for example, a Barnes & Noble would be like 50,000. So you get 4 or 5 of those, a couple of smaller places at 10,000. Now you have a new commercial community that is a draw from the entire state, as people coming up from New York City to get to the casinos, or going down to Boston, or coming from Boston to New York. They go by this and they see this, and it brings people into town.
I kind of think only my own personal opinion, but that kind of setup design is more desirable to people nowadays. No offense to your typical mall, but I think that these outdoor plazas are more. I think people like those a little bit more than the mall setup.
Yeah, and I think it provides you, if you're a retailer, you can put your personality more clearly on the building.
Exactly.
Instead of being in this generic setting, as you refer to. And it's a big economic boost, not only for the region, I think, but for the town. The tax dollars are huge. It's probably near $2 million in additional tax revenue with not very many costs, because these apartments, the way they're putting it in, have shown in studies that they're not going to load kids up with schools, because families aren't having kids like I did when I was, starting my family.
Times are different now.
Times are different. So now the one concern I have is, do these businesses as they come in, these national chains and big boxes, do they threaten the existence of the smaller businesses along Main Street?
Always a concern, yeah.
So I went out and I did some outreach. I talked to some local business communities and organizations, and people thought, yeah, it might be hard, but if you're going to go to a BJ's or a Costco or it doesn't matter whether it's in Waterford or Old Saybrook, you're going to go there for a special event.
Right.
But, I live alone, so I'm not going to be shopping at that place for my needs. I don't need 800 steaks. So
depends on how big a party you're having.
Yeah, but if you're having a party, maybe you go. So the feeling was a bit of apprehension, but I think enthusiasm. In the sense that it would bring people in traffic. So,
for people who go back far enough, they probably remember the downtown New London versus the big Crystal Mall that was going to come in and in fact did take some businesses away from downtown, and then they devised the Captain's Walk thing, and then then finally eventually tore that out. But then it's the whole the big mall versus the little merchants downtown.
Well, and interestingly enough, we talked a lot about the Village in Niantic and fan favorite, and the shops and the walking, and it's very pedestrian. We have an affordable housing unit there that actually acts as an economic stimulator right in Niantic. People can walk to services. Well, in Flanders, we're very vehicular, and it's a big 4 corners there, so there's not much walking. So having this new commercial section up in that area, could be a benefit to Flanders, in the sense it would fit in that area. And the other benefit is a public-private partnership with the state of Connecticut federal DOT money. They're going to revamp that exit. The developer is going to put money in that.
What is your thought on the regional? The state wants to regionalize and have you work together a little bit more with more communities, but that means less money for each municipality. Is that how their idea is to save money?
Well, I think that you're talking about maybe reducing the number of councils of governments and regional planning organizations that they have in the state from 13 down to 8 or 5. I'm the current chairman of the Southeastern Council of Government. And we have 20 municipalities that sit around the table, 2 representatives for both tribal nations and both military installations. And sometimes it doesn't turn into a mechanical combination of a sharing of something, but there's a lot of discussion, and there's a lot of how-to, and there's a lot of really regional expertise that's brought in, and how do you do this, and what do you think we can do, and partnerships are formed. What we have to worry about is when people at the state of Connecticut dictate those partnerships to us without knowing what's happening on Main Street or what's happening on the ground. Because sometimes regionalization costs more money than it does. But that being said, we're looking at the regional dispatch with Waterford and New London. We have a regional
Is that the water program?
That's not the water. That's
Okay.
just dispatch, communications. We have, we're groundbreaking that show that we did a few years ago.
I want you to talk about that a little bit, because that, you're talking about municipalities working together, and you really spearheaded that project. So I want to know how it's going.
Well, we're going to break ground this week. We're going to start laying pipe this week. The design is done. It was financed through the taxpayers of the town of East Lyme at referendum, and the partnership that we have with New London. And basically, to remind your viewers, what we did was the town of East Lyme has a water shortfall every summer because we have wells that are adjacent to streams. And the permitting by DEEP, when the streams fall below a certain height, we have to turn those wells off. And that results in a shortfall. Those two wells in particular account for almost 1 million gallons of water a day. So we knew that every year that happened, so we needed a solution. So we have plenty of water the 9 months the rest of the year. So we designed a pipeline idea, water banking, where we send water in our off-season to New London. That goes right into their system. They use it. 30 million gallons that doesn't come out of their reservoir. In the summertime, we reverse the flow and bring that 30 million gallons back, so it solves our shortfall. And we did some formulas on how to do it and had good negotiations with the city of New London. And in design, the pipe is about ready to be built, and we expect to have water flowing by the end of this year and operational by,
Do you have to cross
April.
Waterford to do that? I'm just curious why you wouldn't use a connecting town. Is it more is it New London? It just works for you?
We looked. Well, New London is where the public utility is.
Okay.
They own the public utility at Lake Conomic, which is on Route 85. We did look at going through Waterford. It would have been a little bit shorter pipe run, but we're at the end of the system there.
Gotcha.
We wanted to be at the beginning of the system. So we did, it's about a 4-mile run on the pipe. We do go through a little bit of Waterford. We provided some fire protection to Montville along the way. We can't provide any domestic water as a result of the state permitting, but we can provide fire protection, which is important. Montville, as you know, has had a history of trouble with fire protection. So it's a regional
venture, really.
Regional venture in that regard. And I was thinking, as part of it, the Council of Governments got involved, our water committee got involved, they helped spearhead it. We have a technical committee now that works for the water committee. And what they've done is they've looked at this pipeline, and now they're looking up near Wyndham to connect to Norwich, and over in Stonington to connect.
So if this works, they're really gonna latch on to this idea and expand it, basically.
So what'll happen is it'll be like the electric grid. You'll be able to move water from East Lyme up into Wyndham if you had to, or Wyndham down into Stonington, or Stonington up into Norwich. And that's important for the future, because we're looking at, in southeastern Connecticut alone, an 8 million gallon per day shortfall in water if we don't do something about it. And now here we are 4 years later, 2 years since we've talked about it on this show, and we're just now putting pipe in the ground.
Is that just a bureaucracy, red tape, that kind of stuff?
Everything takes time.
Yeah.
You're dealing with state permits. You're dealing not only with the Department of Public Health, the Department of Environmental Protection, the Office of Policy and Management, the Department of Transportation on their roads, and then you have to design it, and you have to get the money for, so it's a long process.
The economy didn't help.
The economy, doesn't. Well, the economy helps municipalities, I think, in that it's the best time to buy things, build things, borrow money, provide for services, because everything is cheaper. I have a saying in East Lyme that they elected me to run the town like a business. But unlike most businesses, the town's going to be here 100 years from now. So we have to invest in that new roof or that new building or that new road, because we're going to eventually do it anyway. So if we don't do it when we can, have the biggest bang for our buck, then shame on us.
Speaking of something that's taking forever and may never get done, will Route 11 ever get finished?
I think they're changing it to Route 88 because it's just taken so long. The 11 is just way out.
Yeah,
I don't
so
know what,
they're
I don't know what
raising
they're
the
gonna do.
number.
Yeah.
But does that affect you? I mean, because it's going to
It
go
runs right through East Lyme.
Yeah.
You know, one of
is
the
that something
things,
you're in favor of or not in favor of? Or?
You know, I think to expand the transportation from Hartford and Salem, the road is built and it ends to East Lyme on I-95 makes a lot of sense.
Straight shot to Hartford.
I think, you know, listen, if something happens and we need to evacuate, everybody's been in traffic jams around here. We're just not going anywhere. I don't care if you make both lanes of I-95, both directions go the one way, it's tough. So I think we need that in one sense. But we also need to think about how we get there. We can't dump all those vehicles on I-95 at exit 75.
That kind of clogs it up even more, right?
Without having some kind of management there. We can't force the communities and the Gateway Commission of Route 11 to build a bikeway, which is what's in there now, instead of building a road. You know, so there's a lot of things in that bill that went wrong, I think. But I think eventually it will help, and I think eventually it will get built. It may be another 20 years. The state, by the way, under Governor Malloy, has instituted another study. This time it included the potential of tolls and how that might help to finance. But we don't know where that goes. It's still in the process.
What's the best place, website-wise, for people to go to just learn more about East Lyme in general, Niantic, tourism, anything they want? I know the Facebook page. They could probably get to the Facebook page from the website. I'm sure there'll be a link on there, right?
It's eltownhall.com, and that has a lot of links to a lot of spots, a lot of municipal information, a lot of tourist information, and then Discover East Lyme is another one that we link to and use to, and they do a lot of the business community in downtown in the village. So,
East Lyme First Selectman Paul Formica, as always, a pleasure having you on the show, and we're going to have you on again soon because you're just a bastion of information and a good time.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to see you.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. You can see this show and many others on our YouTube site. In the meantime, I'm Sean Murphy. We'll see you next time. Take care.